I'm John Schlemmer. I lead the motion design at Google.
We have been doing the material design system, and motion design is a big part of that. It was one of the first UI design systems to really think about motion design when it comes to UI. And we came up with 4 principles that serve as the foundation of UX motion, at least what that means in material design. Material design is alive. And it lives in a world a lot like ours. A world that's responsive, natural, aware, and intentional. Some of these principles might seem a little familiar to you. We got a lot of inspiration actually from Disney's 12 Principles of Animation. Material design uses responsive animation to create energy. When you take an action, feedback is immediate.
We had to kind of adapt those things and find the most important parts of those 12 principles to really push forward in UI. Some of those principles work, some don't.
Motion adapts to the distance an element needs to travel, focusing on how fast something needs to move rather than how long it should take to get there. A lot of you here probably work on 10, 15, 30-second spots. Nothing should instantly start or stop. UX motion designers have to think in milliseconds. Milliseconds to tell our story, to let people know how the app they're using is structured, to give them a really good mental model of what they're doing. The peak velocity is what's really important here. So tablet, for example, may need a little bit longer durations, maybe 400 to 450 milliseconds. And smaller screens like on a watch obviously need to move much shorter distances. Maybe this is 150 to 200 milliseconds. The web should be just lightning fast. But in UX motion, we don't have viewers, we have users. Movement is based on interaction, and that interaction can dramatically change from user to user. But we have to make sure that whatever they do, the motion design still makes sense. People's attention spans just getting smaller and smaller, and unfortunately, I'd hate to say this because I know we have a lot of fun doing this, but we have stats like 80 to 90% of the people that use our apps just blow through that intro screen. But people use our apps to get things done. Every movement should have a purpose. And there's really a whole physics system involved with it too. It never keeps you waiting. It can actually help distract you in a good way from things that we don't want our users to see. So maybe like loading or fetching the next screen. I built this really simple logo animation based on the whole the concept of material design being this physical paper. It's more than just UI that we animate at Google. There's so many more opportunities than just UI. There's character animation, there's more traditional classic motion design, but they're all done in a way to just make the app just feel so much more delightful to use.
It's really easy to get excited about interfaces in movies like Iron Man. It's just so much visual overload, and Minority Report is one of the more popular ones. I mean, they're really cool to look at, but could you imagine actually using it? Unless it's like a game simulating that you're Iron Man, right? I don't really see another use for that in an email app, right? They use an email app to check their email to get things done, and we have to make sure that we're designing motion in a way that helps them do that.
Each email in your list is a summarized form of what you're going to read, and that's exactly true. So when you tap it, it expands, and it does it in line, and it pushes the other ones out of the way. So we get this really basic structure of one giant list that you're expanding and collapsing.
This is the new Google Calendar. It looks like this, and this, and this.
So first, it's responsive, right? We have that ink ripple forming where they tapped it, and we have that change in elevation with the shadow. It's natural, which means we have some nice easing curves. We have a little bit of an arc expand. Next, it's aware. So if you look at the top, it knows it is rising to the same elevation level as that app bar with November at the top. So last, it's intentional. So we have a shared element on each view, which is that event image in this case, to really guide you and reinforce you into knowing where you're ending up.
Design is more than pushing pixels. Design is a way of thinking, an exploration to discover what works best. It requires collaboration with your team and the people you're building for.
It's really, really important for engineers and designers to kind of respect each other's fields and understand the nuances that go into each of those disciplines.
If you're interested in learning to code animation, then go for it. I've learned coding to the point of knowing what its limitations are for each platform and knowing how an engineer might approach a certain situation, but it's not entirely necessary. At a place like Google, there's so many engineers that are so smart and are so good at what they do.
To communicate some pretty complex emotion and feeling. You get this really nice sense of character, but more importantly, through animation, you're able to understand when something's working, when something's listening, thinking about something, when you're replying. And not very many companies use motion as a way to really push their brand identity forward in a way like this.
It's one future, I think. I mean, not all of those things have to be interactive, but I think that the interactive portions of it, there's definitely a lot to really continue to improve on. And I know personally that a lot of tech companies are really just going crazy and hiring motion designers for that. So it's definitely one of the faster growing fields of motion design right now.